I'm 31, and here are 10 things I'd like to share with my 20-year-old self and people in their 20s. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Dave Soltura. I'm a Filipino voice actor working with clients across 78 countries. You might know me as your niece or nephew's babysitter, as the voice of Tom, Hank, Ben, and Roy for Talking Tom Shorts for the Talking Tom channel, which is one of YouTube's biggest channels. Let's get right to it. Lesson 1. Delayed gratification. For a lot of people in their 20s, this is the time when you're most excited and have the highest ambition, but there's just one problem. Your goals are over here and your skills are kind of over here. You're probably just at the start of your career, and it can be so frustrating to want to be here, but you're way over here. And maybe you've watched those success stories about these young overachievers accomplishing so much in life in their 20s. Please, don't worry about that. You know the media. They love to sensationalize things. Yes, these people are definitely worthy of praise, but by no means should that be the standard for what you expect of yourself. You have different circumstances, a different set of skills, different people around you, and you are different. Being an overachiever in your 20s is great, but setting that as a norm for the vast majority of people is just going to cause you to be unhappy, especially if you dwell on it. It is completely normal to be in your 20s and still feel like you're lost, so to speak. I prefer exploring. I'm not saying that we should lower our expectations or shrink our dreams, but instead, if your skill level is over here and your goal is over here, and this is a 1-year difference, expand that timeline. I can't talk about the details, but in 2016, I set this goal of being a world-class voice actor by the year 2026. So that's like a 10-year timeline. And this year, it's 2025, and I just achieved my dream role. Something that I've been praying for many years now, and I am pleasantly surprised that it happened. And that's not because I slept, woke up, and became a better voice actor somehow, but by being patient and working on smaller goals. Going from here to here, you would have smaller steps on that staircase, smaller goals that you can achieve. Maybe it's a slightly better paying job, working with a slightly better paying client, finding something that you actually like to do and eventually love to do. These baby steps add up until you reach that goal. And who knows, maybe somewhere along the way you realize that as you climb that staircase more, you realize that that staircase wasn't for you. And that's all right. And the concept of delayed gratification also applies to tech and gadgets. You don't always need the latest and the greatest in tech. The camera I'm using right now is 3 years old. This year, the iPhone 17 is coming out, and I am still on the 12 Pro Max. And if you're working with an older Android phone and it still works for you, that's also completely valid. This Shure SM7B microphone was released in 2001, and the basis for its design goes all the way back to 1973. Michael Jackson used just the previous version of this microphone, and it is still a very popular podcast microphone today. And this exact microphone that I'm using right now, the Neumann U87 AI, was released in 1986 and is still the studio standard for microphones all over the world. Newer technology isn't always better technology. It can be, but not always. Sometimes it's marketing hype. And here, this is the Xiaomi Band 7. The Band 8 was already released, but I chose to buy the 7 because it had an average rating of 4.8 stars over hundreds of reviews. Whereas the new one had like 7 reviews at that time, and yeah, 5 stars, but 7 reviews is not enough to indicate reliability. Also, buying this, which is $30 at the time, it's about the 10th of the price of an Apple Watch with 90% of the features that I need. Okay, this isn't sponsored or anything, but for $30, this has a female health cycle feature. It checks your oxygen levels, you got a timer, it can track your tennis forehands, jumping jacks, and even the quality of your sleep. So in the short term of delayed gratification, getting this over something significantly more expensive means that the money you save can be put towards towards something more urgent, like paying the bills, paying the rent, or buying a new piece of gear that can actually help you make more money. Lesson 2, you don't need to prove anything. When we enter our 20s, this is the time when we really feel like we're adults, or at least begin to. And by that, I mean we begin to live with independence. And the people who used to seem invincible to us, well, we start noticing their flaws. And we might be all, oh, you made those mistakes? Well, I'm not gonna make them. And for some time, in my early 20s especially, that was kind of my fuel. Maybe we found a thing that we really wanted to do, and someone who was meaning well told us, oh, you're gonna try that thing out? Well, I don't know about you, but I think that's a very risky, dangerous thing to try out. Or maybe they told us it wasn't very realistic or feasible, and we're all, oh, I'll show you, it actually works. I've now come to the realization that that's not a very healthy mindset. Because if our entire source of energy is telling the naysayers that they were wrong, then we're giving those naysayers power over our decision. We're basically giving them the keys to our heart and giving them permission to hurt us. I've found that it's much more valuable to have someone that you love and that you want to protect and do what you do because you serve them. Because in my experience, that is far more rewarding than being right. Lesson 3, lean into your strengths. You're in your 20s. You probably have a pretty good idea of what you're good at and what you need to work on. Becoming more aware of your strengths really helps. I learned mine through experience, of course, but I also learned a lot through personality types. You know, you have the 4 temperaments, you have 16 personalities / MBTI or Myers-Briggs, but the most helpful framework that I've found is Clifton Strengths. Again, this is not an ad. I don't think I even get affiliate commissions from this, but Clifton Strengths is a framework where you take a test, and after that, you are shown all of your strengths from your first strongest strength to your 34th strength, or your weakest strength. They also have a cheaper version where they only show you your top 5, and that alone is extremely valuable. My top strength is that I'm futuristic, which has to do about, looking into the future, vision, things like that. Second is being a learner. Third is being an activator, or basically mobilizing people. 4 is this strength they call individualization, which is the strength of knowing people's strengths. And 5 is achiever, which is basically I love getting things done. What about you? Do you know what your strengths are? Once you know them, you can really lean into them, and you start doing less of what you're ineffective at. 4, you do have time to be consistent. When I was in my 20s, I quickly learned that time is gold. Especially as a freelancer or business owner, I know that if I'm not working, I won't be paying the bills because I don't have a steady paycheck. So my mindset was like, okay, well, if time is gold, what if I pour all of my time into work? And so that meant when I was with other people, I would open my phone, I'd be checking my emails, I'd feel incredibly guilty for even going to the mall, going to the gym, or doing any kind of exercise at all, or even picking up a hobby seemed meaningless because they didn't make me any money. Toxic, I know. Now this work 24/7 mindset was doing me more harm than good, because that led me to being very exhausted, social isolation, and because I was pushing myself when I wanted to work, that gave me the sense of, well, you probably need this social media scrolling break, which would go on for hours. But if you are in your 20s, there's a very good chance that you might have that sliver of extra time to let you do small habits over a long period of time, instead of saying, I quit every other aspect of my life and I am just gonna focus on this one thing for the next month or so. And yes, there is a time to go all in on a project of sorts, but it's still possible to do that without neglecting other areas of your life. 5, make time for meaningful relationships. And I say meaningful because I spent a good portion of my 20s just networking, so to speak. Chatting with people because I met them at work or we had a hobby in common. But if you're gonna network, you want to try to take that a step further. You don't want to just have surface level relationships. Because once you're in your 30s, you might notice that you don't have as many friends as you did in your 20s and your teens. But you'll also hopefully realize that, wow, the quality of your relationships has increased. People will come and go. They might change industries, change jobs, move to a different city, state, state, country, but if you made an intentional effort to form a lasting relationship with that friend, they'll be a friend for life. There was an 85-year-old Harvard study on happiness, and what they found is that deep, meaningful relationships help us live happier, healthier, and longer. Also, in many careers, it takes just one person, just one connection to really blow up. As they say, it's not about what you know, but about who you know. All it takes is one person to unlock a network of opportunities. 6. Health is wealth. Someone once told me that younger people have a lot of health and a lot of time, but not a lot of wealth. A bit later into your career, you might have a lot of health and a lot of wealth, but not a lot of time. And when you're older, maybe when you're retired or so, you're gonna have a lot of time and a lot of wealth, but not a lot of health. So if you're in that stage where you don't have a lot of wealth, there's a good chance that you still have a lot of health and a lot of time. And you can leverage these to really build your career. I play tennis and I'm 31. I have a tennis doubles partner who's 25, 26. I generally consider myself energetic. Someone's called me hyper before, but between us, there is a huge gap in energy. If you're in your 20s, that could still be you. But I also tend to find that when we're in our 20s, we're not as conscious about our health because we still have a lot of it. We tend to take it for granted. And health is usually divided into 3 things: food, exercise, and sleep. Quick tip on those 3 things for food: highly recommend reduce sugar intake. Of course, I'm speaking to the general public, where there are studies that sugar really is the food of cancer. If you think this does not apply to you, of course, consult a doctor. But one hack to avoid the sugar consumption is to avoid filling your fridge with added sugar to begin with. And these are tips I got from my parents because they're doctors. When you don't fill your fridge with high sugary foods to begin with, you won't randomly get that urge of taking out a chocolate bar if the bar is not there to begin with. For exercise, just a bit of light jogging, 5 minutes of jump rope every day. I know there are so many apps out there like the 30-minute ab workout exercise app or something. I've tried those in the past and I've found them to be unsustainable. It is much more sustainable to do something very, very small, 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, than to do something unrealistically time-consuming. I tried the usual get shredded in 90 days kind of thing with a before and after photo when you go to a gym, and while, yes, I saw that it was completely possible, it required 3 hours a day, 3 times a week, for a total of 9 hours. So I did my own research and looked into minimalist versions of this, and I just do 15 minutes of, bicep curls, pull-ups, things like that. But I do this about 5 to 6 times a week, and I give myself a break if I miss a day. It's just so much more achievable to start small. And for sleep, honestly, I am still working on it. But what has helped me so far is using blindfolds. Just blocking out the light really improves your sleep quality. You can get these really cheap, and they are gonna improve your quality of life by a lot. Also, I've found that it's so much better to sleep the full 8 hours than to sleep just 7 hours because you're saving time, but then you're groggy for the rest of the day and you end up getting nothing done. So when possible, I try to get my full sleep. Again, this is not for people with medical conditions, but for those who do have an option to sleep that much. 7. Diversify your income. Or in other words, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Now, I'm not saying spread yourself thin and try a million different things. Especially early on in your career, it is important to focus and really build that career. So am I saying build a second career? I'm not necessarily saying that, but once you're building a particular skill set for a particular industry or career, you might be surprised to find that a large portion of the skill set that you're currently developing can be applied to a different field or market. For instance, it was so much easier for me to get on YouTube because voice acting itself is heavily a communication-based skill. By the time I picked up a camera, I wasn't too worried about inflection, tone, and things like that. And my audio was already pretty good because I already used this for voice acting. I also learned that in the process of editing my audio files, I was learning a several separate skill called audio engineering, and that skill also led to sound design. And because voice actors keep on reading from scripts, I've become familiar enough with all sorts of scripts that I can write my own, so I've also become a writer. And let's say you're an amateur streamer, you're learning about your voice, you're learning about camera presence, because that is a live situation. You might also learn to become a live events host. Now, you might not enjoy live events hosting as much as you enjoy streaming, but let's say there are more opportunities financially speaking with live events hosting in the meantime, then you can do some live events hosting on the side while you build your streaming career. Even in voice acting, there are subgenres. I did it to get into anime and video games primarily, but there's also a lot of commercial and corporate voiceover work as well, which I didn't enjoy at first, but it really does pay the bills, and I eventually grew to love it. And now when my character voice acting requires me to sound like a corporate guy, I can use my experience from that thing back into the main thing. It's even smarter if your same skill is solving a problem in a different industry. For instance, the online streaming space tends to be associated with gamer culture and the internet, which are areas that can be affected by AI, for instance. But if you transfer that same live speaking skill into live events hosting, which covers live hosting for events, weddings, award ceremonies, those industries won't be affected by AI as much because they do require in-person engagement. And by the way, I am very optimistic about the state of voiceover in spite of all the doomsday talk about AI affecting the industry, but that's a different discussion. Lesson 8. You don't know what you don't know. It's that simple, really. Sometimes when we're in our 20s, this is when ego and confidence are beginning to build up because adults are supposed to be confident. But being confident doesn't mean we have to be closed-minded. There are still so many things that I'm learning in my 30s. Like everything about health and relationships I've said so far, a younger, more arrogant version of myself would have told me, "Dave, why are you wasting your time focusing on those relationships or whatever? You should be doing the thing. Go out there and chase your dreams." To which I would now say, "Dude, I know what you're trying to say, and I've been there, I know how you feel, and I've felt the same way, but here's what I found. You are going to be so much better at the thing that you're focusing on if you pour from the other areas of your life. Just keeping an open mind and being open to conversations. You know how Snape was portrayed as very antagonistic in the early books of Harry Potter? And spoiler alert, turns out he was on Harry's side all along. I feel that way now about many people that I misunderstood. In my early 20s especially, I saw these older people doing certain things and I thought, why would you do that? That doesn't make sense. We should do things this way, the new way, because new was better and your traditions are invalid. I want to change the status quo. As you develop more empathy over time and certain areas of your brain develop, you might find, oh wow, these guys actually make sense. So I guess a sub-lesson to this would be we can learn from people more advanced in age. That's how it's been since the beginning of time. Younger people gain more experience and become older and then teach the new generation of younger people. I'm not saying that people older than us are perfect. Many of them make mistakes, and some of them are hardly good role models. I'm not saying we should emulate them, but we can definitely learn from them. If they made a mistake or have regrets in life, we could always ask them, hey, what's your thought process behind this? What is your drive? What keeps you doing this thing? And what they say might not always be best for us in our position, but there's always something that we can learn from them. Lesson 9, you are the result of your habits. Growing up, I had this concept that, I'm not a sporty guy, or I'm not talented at singing, or I'm not a piano type of person. I have horrible discipline, just a horrible, unhealthy self-concept overall. But just applying the concepts from Atomic Habits by James Clear, 1% difference every day is gonna change everything. Again, I play tennis, and my wife does too, and she's been playing tennis since she was this small, and I just started last year. So my wife, being the intuitive player that she is, learned how to do a proper tennis serve in a matter of, less than a month. And I have been working on mine for a little more than a year now, and I'm still not satisfied with where it is, but she reassures me that, well, that's a thing. I grew up with this background, so I have more experience. It may look as though she is simply more talented, maybe she has the genes for it, but since she was this small, they had a tennis court literally beside their house. While I was playing hide and seek, she was playing tennis. So I have no right to complain and say, oh, it's not working, I'm not putting in enough effort, I don't have the genes for this. If we think about it, she's got at least 2 decades of experience more than I do. So it's not a talent thing, it's an effort thing. And she has put in more effort. If you're not getting the results that you want, be very, very honest with yourself. Have you put in the work? Have you put in the same or more work than the top professionals in your field? And it's not just the time spent, but the quality of the time spent. Maybe you're learning the guitar and you're spending 3 hours, but is it 3 hours of doing scales and actually following the beat of the metronome? Or could it be that you're just playing with a guitar randomly? Make sure that when you're going to practice something, be it an instrument, sport, or skill, that you're going to try to improve one thing. Lesson 10. It's not always about you. Now, I know this might sound pessimistic maybe. I'm not saying that you are unimportant or that you should value yourself less, because that's not what I believe. I believe you are precious and extremely valuable. All I'm trying to say is that the world has 8 billion people and it's been around for a very long time. And in the grand scheme of things, if you are to fail at something, it's going to be the end of the world. Or inversely, if you succeed at something, the world is going to be a utopia. Now, I know the story of a prince who sees himself as the best thing ever since toilet paper was invented. And he's thinking of how much the kingdom could be so much better if only he were to become king. And then there's this prophet or oracle who shows him a vision and just shows him how insignificant his efforts are in the grand scheme of things. Like, sure, maybe in the future he does become king, but in the future, the kingdom crumbles anyway. You know, the world's been around this long and we are a dot, a speck in that. And there are events way beyond our lifetime, beyond our control. Now, all I'm trying to say with the concept of it's not always about you is there's no reason to panic. Now, just in a more grounded, everyday kind of conversation, I do feel as though as an adult, more is expected of me. And so I put on this unnecessary pressure of being the absolute best version of me for everyone around me. And while some pressure is good because pressure is a privilege, too much of it can just make you feel like you fall short. And it just creates that sense of being hard on yourself. Sometimes I would have these goals about having a certain income by a certain time, and then I'd be surprised that we do achieve that, not because of my own efforts, but also because there are people around us who genuinely care about us. I absolutely believe in a service mindset and helping others, but giving can't take place without receiving. Sometimes you need help too. There is just this incredible feeling when people help you because they care about you. And here's a bonus lesson. It's okay to be starry-eyed. It is okay to be excited about life. You know, being in my 30s, this is the age that Nigga Higga quit YouTube. Just the other week, a family friend who's in his early 20s said, "You kind of remind me of a post-anime protagonist." Not sure what he meant by that exactly. Could be one of two things, because usually a lot of anime are coming-of-age stories, and the protagonist is just learning about life. Sometimes a story might have a sequel where the bright and starry-eyed protagonist is now dark and brooding because I've seen the horrors of adulthood. Or sometimes the protagonist is still very hopeful about life, but just in a more grounded kind of fashion. I'd like to think he meant the latter, because honestly, I've tried the whole dark and brooding thing myself. People told me to be less energetic, less optimistic. You know, when people say these things, sometimes they're trying to project their failures onto you. Like, things didn't turn out well for me, therefore they won't turn out well for you. Or, I'd rather they won't turn out well for you. But sometimes people don't realize that, so please be patient with them. Like, maybe you saw a friend who finally got married, and then you asked them, "Hey, how's life now?" And they're like, yeah, you know, the typical married couple stuff. yeah, we're doing okay, which could be true for your friend, but don't let these statements affect what's possible for you. Like, in your reality, if you are genuinely happy about that marriage, for instance, then enjoy it. Tell the world about it. Don't be all, once you're in my shoes, it's gonna be a living hell. Or when people tell you, you're still so young, you still don't understand life yet, you will go through more. There is some truth to that we might experience more discomfort in life, but we don't have to dwell on that discomfort. And we can change how things turn out for us. You can change how things turn out for you. So yeah, that's it, 10 lessons. Hope you like this video, and I just want to thank these incredible people. Thank you. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, I would really, really appreciate it. Just take a moment to hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video, I'll see you in this one.